Opinions on Anthony Albanese. While Australia has two large traditional parties like the US and UK, feel most Americans have no clue about Australian politics and are neutral to all Aussie leaders. Albanese seems to be kinda similar to Biden, quite progressive on cultural issues like racial representation and gender equality. At least centre-left on economic issues. And rather hardline when it comes to China and focusing on upgrading the military to confront them. Progressive is a word that's thrown around way too much these days. Neither Albo or the current ALP are progressive in the traditional sense, they're just slightly less regressive than the other people. 610. Alright, not great. Heart seems to be in the right place, not much of a details man. Some of the thank God it isn't ScoMo charm has worn off as he's exposed his weaknesses. Better than the previous, and better than the alternative. Meh. He's not horrible. But he's not great either. We have all these mediocre, meddling, not all that inspiring leaders in politics in Victoria, and it's not changing anytime soon, unfortunately. Anthony Albanese is a good manager of an excellent team of ministers that reports to him. He knows that they are competent and lets them get on with the job. His government has achieved more in their short time in office than the previous coalition achieved under multiple prime ministers. He may not be as dynamic as Hawke and Keating, but he is incredibly competent, and really that is what we need after the chaos of the previous 14 years. Soft-spoken to China though, which works better. Centre, or centre-right in the Australian economic context so far IMO. Hostage to the fossil fuel industry. Continuing his small target election campaign through a small target first term, so perhaps too early to judge. Will lose the referendum, but make sure it costs opposition more than it does Labour. Most politically astute leader we have had since Howard. Talented ministry, some of whom are chafing at inability to get started. Very disappointed. He seems fixed on creating a political legacy for himself in the history books rather than addressing the day-to-day issues. I gave up on him when I saw him quaffing champagne at Kyle Sandilands' wedding. Julia Gillard would never have done that. FFS, people here saying he's better than ScoMo, but that's not saying much anymore. He's better than the last three LNP leaders and Dutton combined. I like him, especially after our last PM, but I think that is probably the main reason why. I mean, the guy has come into a country off the rails with a housing crisis and cost of living through the roof. I'm not expecting miracles. Talk about pressure, you know. The US Democrat Party is more right-wing than most other countries' right-wing parties. I voted for the cunt because the only other alternative was ScoMo. I think he is still a decent cunt, but these latest scandals, Qantas and the whole clusterfuck behind the Voice has soured my opinion of him. Also going to Sandilands' wedding and also being on TV in a BHP-branded fluoro shirt didn't exactly do him any favors. In any case, he is still much better than Mr. Potato Head. He's not the greatest leader we've ever had, but he's pretty much the best available. A bit like South Park says. Last election you had the choice between a douche and a turd sandwich. Douche became the least objectable one. I think he's doing a good job. I think they work as a team and have mended fences internationally. I respect that he's not come from a wealthy background, he lived in public housing and nepotism got him nowhere. I didn't vote for him, but he's all right. Not particularly charismatic or inspiring, but nor was the last guy. I think he's doing his best though, even if I don't agree with everything he does. I'd consider voting for him at the next election. I'm glad he's still standing up to China, that's a massive issue for me that I will vote based on. He's only slightly better than a previous Labour Prime Ministerial candidate Mark Latham. Nation dodged a bullet there. Albo is the leader of the less shit party. I'm so disappointed in the whole government so far, but better than the alternative. He did some good at the start, but seems to be a one-trick pony as of late. Be interesting to see his direction after the Voice. I voted him in and I feel as though he is doing everything but address the core issue in society, the cost of living crisis. I'm very disappointed. Australian political parties don't map cleanly to American ones. You can't just look at the left and the right and say these are equivalent. Albo is doing a pretty good job though, repairing a mess from the previous government. That's one similarly with Biden. I like him because he's not a huge personality. It's about the representatives and the party, not the leader. He was inoffensive till he decided that the voice would be his legacy. In the middle of multiple economic and social crises. His legacy is going to that of a dumbass for the vast majority of Australians, and for some people he's also going to cement that Australia is a racist shithole, when the voice fails to get up after running a piss-weak and vague campaign. The only reason he may not be a one-term Labour government is because of shit the Libs were prior and Scotty from marketing won't fuck off lol. Disappointing AF. We voted for change and he has just given us more of the same old crap. A little less showy, but that's about the only real difference in practice. Please. Tell me one concrete thing he has done in the last 2 years besides crap on about the voice. I can't think of one. Someone once said, don't trust anyone who plays the working man and rubs shoulders with the super rich, Nuff said. He's full of shit, best mates with Joyce. Enough said. I thought this said onions on Albo. And I was like, no, that was our last PM who ate onions on TV. What a country we live in. Confronting our major trading partner, causing untold harm to the economy. Buying stuff we don't need, policies we don't need, and a referendum with no information. Portrays the Aussie battler who went corporate. The last flog needed to go, wasted hundreds of billions we didn't have. Kept us in the dark and fed us BS. A clown would have won the last election. Opinion 1: he couldn't beat Chuck Norris in a fight. Biden, like all mainstream American politicians, is center-right on economic policy. He's very beige, very meh. Our politicians on the whole aren't inspiring. I look at Americans going to political rallies and I just can't imagine anyone caring that much in Australia. Classification of citizens is regression. Just a normal, unexceptional man. So odd he's in charge of Australia. But at this point, the world probably envies us having a vanilla, boring leader, since he isn't actually destroying us. A non-event. More useless than tits on a ball. He wouldn't know shit from clay. He's a wet lettuce leaf. A massive disappointment. Albo is shallow with no substance. He won with the youth because of course he did. He won with the middle because his opponent was a Teletubby representing a party that has been in power for too long. He'll win the next election because the opposition don't actually have anything to say, but history will remember him as all froth, no coffee. Albanese is very much traditional Labour: education, healthcare, social welfare, fair wages and work conditions, fair distribution of wealth, reconciliation for Aboriginals and so on. On foreign policy and defence, there is probably not a lot of difference between Albanese and Dutton, the leader of the opposition. Note the Liberal Party National Party coalition are the Conservatives. Liberal does not mean progressive in Australian politics. The Australian Landlord Party offers up liberal-light policies. Nothing ambitious, nothing radical, nothing transformative or optimistic. The party exists for the sake of the party power and process, nothing else. Albanese is the perfect embodiment of this. Albanese is like all the rest of the political garbage, a bunch of self-serving malevolent monsters who won't help anyone, not blindly obedient to them, pouting face. He's a cunt. But less of a cunt than the other cunt. Performative, no substance or conviction. I felt he was more interested in gaining the job title than the actual desire to make change. The whole started from the bottom. Now we hear story ad nauseam, and now the voice fiasco confirms to me he is just chasing plaudits for himself.